Hello students, how are you today? I hope you enjoyed your spring break and I hope you're doing very well in your homes. Well, today we're going to be learning even though you're in the house, but still we will have to learn. So we're going to continue our lessons and today we'll be having math. So I need you to get your pencils, get your rulers, very important. Get your pencil case, your erasers, get your books, your math workbook, your math student book. Get everything you need together so we can do some math. Okay, I'm going to give you just about 30 seconds to get everything you need and then we can begin the class. 30 seconds starts counting now. It's almost time. Okay, our time is up and we have to start our lesson. Now look up on the screen and see what you have there. We have different items scattered around the screen. Does this say anything to you? Do you know the lesson that we're going to have today? Do you know the units? Do you want to guess? Maybe you're correct, but let's see if you're correct. Now, what do we have on the screen? I have a ruler, I have a pencil, I have a sharpener, I have some words scattered around the screen. I have a learning wheel. I have something that looks like a tape measure. I also have something that looks like something for measuring things. That's the one I have at the right hand corner of the screen this way. Yeah, it looks like a tape measure. Okay, so with all the things I have on the screen, what do you think we're learning? What does it look like we're learning? Does this look like math? Okay, let's see if the learning wheel is going to help us. We have some letters on the learning wheel. Let's see if we can make something out. I have Marasuze. Are you also trying it? Yeah, please do try it. That doesn't sound like math, Marasuze. Okay, let's try another one. Asusa. No, it doesn't sound like math too. Okay, let's try again. I have MEASURE. MEASURES. Yes, measures. Yeah, we're going to be learning measures. And we have millimeters, we have meters, centimeters. I'm sure we're going to be learning measures. Yeah, you got it right. Thumbs up. Now let's see what we have on the next slide. Okay students, so just like we said, we're learning measures and we're on lesson 11 and unit 1. So pick up your student book. We'll be looking through pages 212 through 214 and the workbook is from page 166 to 167. Now, what exactly are we learning about length or about measures? What exactly are we learning about measures today? Of course, the next thing you can see there is units of length. What comes to your mind when you hear units of length? I know you've done something similar in science, but then what comes to your mind? Now, what comes to your mind is, how do you measure length? That's what comes to your mind. How do you measure the length of a thing? For example, if I said to you, what is the length of your pencil? Would you tell me the length of my pencil is 4 kilometers? Haha, that doesn't sound good. Or would you say to me, the length of my pencil is 4 kilograms? Of course not. So what then can we use to measure length? In what units do we measure length? In what unit do we measure the height of a thing? after this lesson, we must be able to choose the best unit of measurement for different objects because we have different units for measuring different objects, and that is what this unit is all about. So just pay attention and listen. Let's see what we have next. So what units do we use to measure lengths? How do you measure the height of something? What are the units we use? Now we can see on the screen we have millimeters, we have centimeters, we have meters, and we have kilometers. Let's look at it one after the other. Millimeters. What exactly do we use when what objects do we measure millimeters with? What kind of objects? We have insects, we have your fingernail, a coin, paper clips. Now, when you find a very tiny object, like maybe a housefly, and you want to measure, it's so tiny. And if I asked you, what's the height of the fly? You will measure in millimeters. Okay? You can also measure your fingernail. Fingernail, not your finger. The fingernail, look at it. Take a look at your fingernail. It's so tiny. You can measure in millimeters. You can measure a paper clip as well in millimeters. We have examples of those items you can measure in millimeters. Now let's go to centimeters. Centimeters is for objects that are a little bit bigger, like your book, your notebook you have with you, your workbook, your pencil case. You can measure them in millimeters, in centimeters, because they're a little bit bigger. Okay? Now let's look at the next one, meters. Now you see the objects there, the arrow pointing to an object in the meters section. The arrow is pointed to something like a big pipe. Okay? Now you measure objects or large objects like trees, like big pipes, tunnels, like a playground, bus, airplane. Of course, they're larger objects. So you measure those ones in meters. So if I said to you, what is the height of the tree in front of your house? You have to measure in meters. Okay? You have to measure in meters because your ruler is going to be too small to measure them. So you can measure those ones in meters. Now, what about kilometers? For kilometers, to measure kilometers, you have to use, we measure kilometers when we use kilometers when we are measuring length of roads. Okay, distance and length of roads. So if, for example, I said to you, what is the distance between the school and your home? You will not say to me 560 centimeters. No, you have to measure in kilometers because you're measuring a very long distance or a very long length of road. So for kilometers, we measure roads, we measure distance with kilometers. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So, what have you been able to learn today? You've been able to learn the type of units we use to measure, you've been able to learn the type of units we use for measuring length. So, if you're measuring length, you use 4 kinds of units. And what are the units? I call them MC, MK. MC, MK. To make it simple for you, what is MC, MK? MC, MK is millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. So whenever units of length comes to your mind, MC, MK comes to your mind. Simple, right? Millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. And what's the other thing we were able to learn? We were able to learn to choose the best units to measure different objects. For example, we said we can measure tiny objects with millimeters. We also said for centimeters, we can measure our pencil case, that's objects that are a little bit bigger. Meters is used to measure large larger objects like the length of a tree, the length of a bus, the length of a building, and so on. And finally, kilometers is used to measure the distance between places or the length of a road. Now, how do you choose the best units? Oh no, we have a task. We have a task, and the task is to use your ruler to measure the length of your math workbook. So you pick up your math workbook and you tell to me the answer on Class Dojo. Pick up your ruler, measure the math workbook, and say to me what the length of your math workbook is in centimeters. I have a ruler at the bottom of the screen here. You see where the ruler has centimeters and it has millimeters at the top? Okay, you're going to need to measure in centimeters. That's the one that has the larger spaces. Okay, millimeters is tinier. They're the lines in between the centimeters. So you measure in centimeters and say to me your answers on Class Dojo. Okay, now we've been able to learn units of length. Let's see something else that we also need to learn today. We have to try this. We're going to see how the perfect units of measurements to be sure that we understand what we just learned. Okay? Now we have a pencil. Remember we said over and over again, how do we measure a pencil? I give you some time to look at the screen and think about what we're supposed to use to measure. I know you can see them beneath, but then just try. Do you think the answers are correct? How do you measure your pencil? You can measure your pencil with a ruler, so you can measure in centimeters. A football field, not a football field is big. It's quite large, so you can measure that in meters. What about a bus? Remember we said a bus is quite large. You cannot measure your bus with a ruler, so you have to measure in meters. What about your foot? Your foot. If you your friend had to get you a pair of shoes, and your friend asked you, what is the length of your foot? I have to pick up a shoe for you, a pair of shoes for you. You can simply pick up your ruler and measure the length of your foot, so you can measure in centimeters. What about this bug we have here? It's an insect, so you can actually measure that in millimeters because it is very tiny. And finally, the journey of a car, the distance this car is going to travel from the home to another town. What is the best unit to use to measure that? Kilometers. Perfect. Great job. You did a good job. Okay, remember to measure with your ruler, your your workbook, and you send to me the answers on Class Dojo. Also, you have to do your homework from workbook page 166 to 167. Also, you can send your answers to me in my email that has been sent on Class Dojo, and your parents can help you to send it. All right, now we have to go to the next thing today.